Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzan Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, welcome everybody to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Nick Spano, the president of Essential Equipment, that is a specialist in storm and sewer inspection and cleaning equipment. So welcome to the show, Nick.
Hi, thank you, Suzan, for having me.
Well, it's interesting because you shared with me that you have kind of a neat background in that you started in this industry as a contractor. And so tell me a little bit about that and what made you decide, and also the fact that you also shared with me that you were a pandemic company. There's someone that's not afraid to take a risk. What made you decide to take the shift from being a contractor and go into being an equipment sales specialist?
Well, I started in the sewer world when I graduated from college in 2010.
Okay.
So didn't really plan necessarily. This wasn't like so many people, this wasn't the exact plan. But I found a job, a bachelor's degree in my back pocket on a smoke testing crew, working for a contractor in central South Louisiana, and sort of just kind of ran with that. Did smoke testing, manhole inspection, CCTV, cleaning. I worked for that company for over 10 years, worked my way through project management, worked on some really awesome, fun projects all over the US. New York, Nashville, Hawaii, like really did a lot of traveling and ran a lot of projects and had a great time doing it. But then eventually, and then actually ended up creating a training program and doing hiring for that company, and sort of, I think saw a lot of different roles and responsibilities. Pandemic hit, and I guess just seemed like it was a good time for a change. I don't know. It has been great, but it's kind of a whole new thing. Essential Equipment, which the name sort of pandemic related, there was all the talk suddenly, as if we weren't always there, of essential workers, right? And that was such a kind of a buzzword, right?
Right. We were essential industry, essential workers, right?
Right. So I just kind of ran with that. I was like, well, if we're essential workers, the essential workers are using the equipment, then surely it's essential equipment.
Right.
So kind of just ran with that, and it's been a really, really busy 2 years.
Wow. That's so cool. So, you've probably seen a lot of changes in the industry and in equipment. What do you see as been, or what have been, some of the most important breakthroughs in equipment for, CCTV inspect? There's been so many things for inspection, but there's been some advancements in cleaning techniques as well.
I think a lot of the advancements have been kind of driven by non-industry tech, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when I first started TVing, all the TV trucks still had VHS recorders and DVD recorders in them.
Okay.
So as we've had the evolution of cellular networks, for example, these days, we went from delivering a box of DVDs
Right.
right, to now delivering a link to a server somewhere where,
The cloud, right?
right, everything's on the cloud. Maybe if you're still in the Stone Age these days, you're delivering a hard drive, right, or a flash drive of
Mhm.
videos. And I say that jokingly. I mean, obviously, like
Right.
that's a fine medium to transfer the files, but it's come such a long way when you think of that. And I would hear stories of when I first started. The stories were, oh, I remember when we used to have a cargo van full of VHS tapes. So that wasn't that long ago, in the grand scheme of things. So it seems like things have come a really long way really quickly.
Right.
Um,
What do you see coming down the pike?
I think we're gonna see really. I don't know if there's anything. I mean, besides AI, everybody that's kind of talked about so much lately.
Right. Everybody's talking about it, right?
I think you're going to continue to see the proliferation of GIS into smaller communities.
Okay.
Okay, because I think that there's a really long trickle down in our industry. Um, all your big cities, of course, have GIS, have everything in the cloud, have online work management systems on tablets or iPads or whatever in the field. Um, but I think like overall, like that is going to keep trickling down to like middle America and smaller cities. You know, as people retire, right? We know that's coming. There's going to be less workers, and I think smaller cities are going to have to continue to rely on or start than manpower.
Right. Well, we're talking a lot about our, the buzz is about like smart city initiatives, smart city networks and cloud and data and using that data to make decisions. So do you see that, utilities are using it for metering and capturing and for billing and a lot of things like that? Do you see CCTV becoming part of that mix, or cleaning and work orders? I mean, asset management's been around for quite a while, but do you see that becoming a bolt on?
Um, I think I think to some degree, I think it's going to be utilized more not for. I mean, we have CCTV equipment, sort of what we were talking about a second ago, has become smarter
Right.
in terms of great features that make the job easier. But I think we're going to have to focus on efficiency and sort of utilizing a whole suite of tools. CCTV is not going to go away. Um, Cleaning is not going to go away. But I think we're going to add in supplemental technologies more so. I think they're already out there, but I think they're just going to keep, like I said, trickling down uh, through communities of all sizes. I think we're going to have to use SLRAT as a triage to focus on the cleaning and TV.
Mhm.
I don't think we're going to see a huge shift in which technologies we're using. I think we're going to see a shift in how we're using them.
Okay. Because you mentioned about, efficiency because of fewer workers. We're going to have to work smarter instead of harder.
Right.
And so that brings me to, there's always, technology that comes out. And I'm one of those people. I've been teased by my family that I'm a total geek. I'm the first one to get the new latest and greatest device because I just think it's cool, early adopter.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes buying a piece of equipment based on it's got all those great bells and whistles.
Yeah.
But is that something that you really need for the projects that you're going to be working on? And do you need to be spending that kind of money where something else that doesn't have all that is still going to get you from point A to point B in an efficient manner? So, what would you advise folks, looking for new equipment? How can they get easily to that short list for buying as far as those essential features and what's just kind of right now, oh, that's really cool, but in the scheme of things, it may just be a good sales feature and it's really fluff.
Yeah. Yes. So, and I don't really like, not that there's, I mean, I just don't think of myself as a salesperson. I've
Okay.
never, I'm not, I haven't ever been. I mean, that's not been my background. I like to, I guess we all like to think highly of ourselves, but I like to more think about myself as more of a like solutions provider. because there
Okay.
is such a wide range. Or I mean, you could say consultant. That's so generic though, but I
Mhm.
mean, it's because it is really about like what is an individual contractor or municipalities, what is their need? It's not necessarily about what I have to sell. It's about what they need. Um, and I think that's the key really for long-term relationships with customers. I don't know that it is really does anybody any. I hear stories all the time. We're out there talking to people. Oh, so and so sold me this truck. It was this much money, and your jaw just drops. Because every now and then, I guess there's a situation where people can really, uh, you know, build out a top of the line, all the bells and whistles type uh,
Well,
type
they know
equipment
they have the
package. And
budget to
that's
spend, and so let's try
yeah,
using up all that budget, but it may not be in the best interest.
yeah. I mean, we need to think about service. We need to think about repairs. We need to think about cost of ownership, and then we need to think about which features, sort of like you said, which features are going to add true value versus which features are just going to get turned off or ignored or not used by the operator. And I think you see that in a lot of, especially cleaning equipment. I think, a combination truck, I think that's one of the places that when we hear from customers, they are not interested in a lot of crazy sensors and newfangled type technology. At the end of the day, this thing needs to pump water and needs to move air. And a lot of the operators or yeah, one thing I like about the products that we sell is that they can be made simply. They can be easy to operate, and not a big thing with that is how tied in is this to the chassis computer. And we're seeing I think there's definitely it either is or it isn't. And I think we're seeing um, a push away from that type of technology, like tying into the CAN bus on the chassis, because it really doesn't have anything to do with cleaning pipe. It may provide additional sensors, additional data on some type of screen, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really provide a better product to clean pipe.
Okay, that makes a
So
lot of sense.
yeah, so you're paying for that. Like you're paying for that tech or those features, like you said, and is that really going to make you clean more pipe? I don't know. That's certainly up to the customer. Um, and the same with camera systems. Um, what features are the most functional for you? Do you need HD video? Do you need 4K video? Um, maybe so, maybe not. It just depends on the application. Um, I think for like manhole inspection cameras, I think the higher resolution is fantastic. I mean, there's been a big shift to the inspection rehabilitation of manholes, right? I mean, I'm kind of rambling, but we're kind of going through all the parts and pieces of our collection systems, right?
Right.
We've been on mainline forever.
Yes. And the lowly manhole. The manhole has been ignored for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And sadly, I mean, they're finally starting to realize that it can be a huge source of I and a lot of problems, as well as the laterals, big
Oh
contributor.
yeah.
And so, yeah, having the right tools, which leads me to, let's say you've decided on a piece of equipment and you really like it, you like all those features. What, from a due diligence standpoint, whether they bought from you or somewhere else, because I take it you're a regional person, that what questions as an owner should they be asking themselves that you see that people don't often ask, but they really should be? And I think we talked about this before you came on the show about what's going to be the cost for those consumable parts that are going to wear out that I'm going to need to replace so often. When you were talking earlier about the true cost of ownership over the life of that equipment.
That's right, and that's definitely the most important part of it. And that's going to vary again with the user. We have customers that we don't hear from in terms of needing repairs. We may hear from them every 6 months because they just simply don't use the equipment every day. like some of your smaller munis, like they have the camera truck, but it's not something that's out there every day.
Okay.
So maybe it's less important to them. And then you have customers that are running 4 camera trucks every day, that, under some kind of program or, some kind of regulatory
Consent decree. Yeah.
consent decree, so it's much more important to them. You have to know about service. You have to ask about service. Where's the equipment going to be serviced? Is it going to be locally serviced, regionally serviced? Does it have to go back to the manufacturer? I think those are the important things. We operate a service center. I mean, that's kind of our big thing. That's what I think is important, and that's why I thought that I would be a good fit for running an equipment company, because I've been a user of equipment for so long, that I feel like I have a good grip on the service aspect of the equipment.
Yeah, because you had mentioned, one of the first things to ask is, well, what about the service after the sale? And I also think it comes down to, and maybe you can elaborate on this, there's got to be some accountability on the part of the owner too, if they expect that equipment to be serviceable, have years of good, reliable service. And so what would you say to a prospective client as to what they need to be prepared for themselves, like giving them a laundry list? These are the things you need to be prepared for if you want your investment to work as hard as you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing is training. I think, that's something that I think most companies offer with delivery of the equipment. But how serious is that? I mean, how serious do your operators take that training? Because that's the chance to ask all the questions. Because the guy that's using it every day, I mean, he's the one that needs to really understand what's expected of him. For most of the equipment, I think it starts at cleanliness. I think it's something that's often overlooked.
Mhm.
I'm just going to put it back down in the sewer. It stays dirty. That's a logical response, but it's not a good one for the longevity of the equipment. I mean, this is across all brands, right? It's a robot. It has lots of moving parts. It has lots of electronics, regardless of brand. If you don't keep it clean, if you don't take care of it, if you don't disassemble it to some degree regularly, you're going to have more problems. They're all meant to be submerged underwater. But there's lots of things down in the sewer that are going to work their way into all the cracks and the crevices, and eventually break down that barrier, right, that keeps the water out. So I think those are just the important things to think about: keeping it clean, doing some basic maintenance. Do you have someone on staff that can perform basic repairs? If you do, that's fantastic. Most of the, I would say, reterminations, that's number one. If you can have somebody on staff that can reterminate the end of the cable, possibly that's the most common. That is the most common wear item. That's the working end, right? It's, I think that's great. But kind of back to training, that termination will last a lot longer if you're using your rollers properly. If a lot of people love the tiger tails, just fine. If you're making sure there's no holes, making sure that the cable's not rubbing on the manhole rim, not rubbing on the invert of the pipe. I think those things are just, it's the little things, right? It's the, can we instill in our employees some degree of a feeling of ownership, that they should take care of this equipment?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, is that maybe there should be a checklist at the end of the day when the truck comes back in off the field, that these are the things I do daily, these are the things I do weekly, these are the things I do monthly or quarterly or whatnot, to keep things up and running. Coming from the industry, I had a few clients that when they bring their truck in for service, it would really shock me that truck and the equipment looked, other than just your normal wear and tear and your scratches that happen from being in a live sewer, that equipment looked as clean and as pristine as the day that it left the shop floor. on purchase day. And then we'd have other folks, and I won't name names, who came in that actually there was one time that our service techs opened up the back door, took a look at it and said, "I'm sorry, but I am not getting in there without a hazmat suit." I mean, they went in with full on hazmat. There were things, I'm not just talking on the camera, I'm talking, there was stuff that defied description on the walls, on the countertops, on the floors, on the seats. And as an operator, I honestly don't know how or why they would want to work in those conditions.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, I think that does come from top down. As that, you as an owner, you've invested a lot in that equipment. Like you were saying, instilling that sense of ownership in the operator to be concerned about the equipment as much as the owner. Maybe there should be a bonus program for keep things clean,
For cleaning. I think we're just going to have to change that mindset, because we're going to find fewer and fewer people who are willing to work in those conditions. I mean, we have to start treating these CCTV operators, we have to treat that position like the technical job that it is.
Yes.
It's a difficult job. It's a job that requires a great deal of training. We should treat it like a professional position.
Absolutely.
And I think we're going to have to attract people to our industry.
Right, which is what we're going to talk about in our next segment. And you had mentioned to me, and we're going to share about this, is that in order to keep this industry growing, we need new blood, because inspectors are not just, they stick a camera down a manhole and they take a bunch of pretty pictures. They have to be they have to understand hydraulics. They have to understand spatial and geometry in some ways. They have to know how to operate a computer. And if they're doing, any type of PACP, data collection, they have to understand some pretty complex software and analysis. They have to be mechanically inclined, so they can fix things on the fly. And so you're right. They're not just, I hate to use this word, but they're not just a grunt worker, a laborer. These are people that are now, because of the way that we need to do inspection, are very highly skilled people that just not everybody can do this job and has that mix of skill set in order to do it well. And That's so we're going to get into that a little bit more on our next episode as we continue to visit with Nick. But, I want to thank you for your time and sharing, what your thoughts are in the industry and where it's going to evolve. And, great words of wisdom for those that are looking to buy, do that due diligence, make sure you ask those questions and really know what are you getting into here? It may be a pretty piece of equipment, but is it going to do what you need it to do?
Yep. It's all beautiful on day one, right?
And, it's like, there's some people that are, they're just attracted to the latest and greatest bright, shiny object. And that may not be the best decision for what they need to do in the field. Yeah. And so I want to thank you for, being on the show with me today. And Nick and I are part of a group that's going to be on LinkedIn. What is it? The infrastructure. In the infrastructure roundtable. So thrilled to be part of this group, to be invited to be part of this group. So lots of episodes, lots to talk about. So again, Nick, thank you for being on the show, and look forward to continuing the dialogue about workers for our industry. And thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2it group /B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.